Hi and welcome back to another video on this channel. Thanks for tuning in. As you might realize, the setup today is a bit different than the usual, and I have deliberately set my mic up here because I just want to show it off. I mean, I bought this for myself for my birthday, and I'm taking every chance I can get to show it off because it looks so good. And yeah, and I hope the audio quality kind of shows as well. Um, Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, I'm Nat and I make content about books on my booktube, but also on Instagram as well as TikTok now. I am making a lot of content about books. I think I'm going a bit insane, but it's been really fun making videos about books here on YouTube. And today's video is gonna be like a podcast style video because I just want to ramble about this topic and give a little bit more analysis, I guess, to this whole trend. And today's topic, I guess, to introduce it briefly, is about reading as this social trend that I'm seeing. Really briefly, it's about this whole reading is changing my life sort of thumbnail I've been seeing around on YouTube a lot. And it's reading has kind of been trending, dare I say, like it's becoming a trendy thing right now to read. If you've been on social media and on the book side of social media, you would see that there are a lot of bookstagrammers that are, getting a lot of followers, and the aesthetics are on point. And on TikTok there are like tons of book talkers that are making so much content about book recommendations, and some of the ways that these people are recommending books are so creative and really quite fresh. So I'm kind of surprised actually, like to see this attention that's being put on books. I don't know whether it's just me because I've been searching so much about books online, and I'm dabbling in content creating about books. So definitely that's going to show up on my feed. So if you're not really someone that knows about these trends, like do let me know if it's actually infiltrating into the mainstream media. But I guess for now it's still kind of niche. It's still kind of a small subculture thing. And I've seen videos about people talking about how reading was seen as this very nerdy thing in the past, and now it's cool, it's trendy, and it makes you smart, and everyone wants to be that intelligent bookish nerd in the corner now. Surprisingly, I think a lot of young people are oh, okay, that's the thunder. Sorry, I am in Singapore, and hence there's rain and there's thunder, even though it's so bright outside. So please do pardon the storm at moments. And so, yes, where was I? Oh yeah, bookish nerds. Apparently, there's a lot of romanticization of being nerdy and reading a lot. And I don't think it's just me though. I mean, just last week, Emma Chamberlain did upload a video about reading, asking people for book recommendations. And there are a lot of popular YouTubers now that are pivoting into book related stuff. So like, for example, Jen Im is one lifestyle YouTuber that is running a very successful like side channel on books. And not side channel, I mean it's on her main channel, but she runs a lot of successful things about books, and I've seen a lot of like people moving into that realm. And I just feel a bit, I have a lot of feelings about this, so let's just unpack that. And first, let's just go into the whole social media and reading thing. I mentioned a little bit about this in my previous video, which is about being online, reading and being online. And I feel like the act of reading and the act of being online can have a lot of friction at times because reading is what I see it as something that's a bit more deliberate and slow, and something that you have to really take as a whole. Like you can't really take fragments of a book and then just, I mean, I guess people quote books, but you can't really, just read one excerpt of a book, especially if it's a novel or fiction. And, it does require that mental space. Like you do have to dedicate some time and effort and concentration to finish a book. Whereas social media can be pretty mindless. It can just be like this influx of stimulus that you never really remember. So like maybe you might be watching a video an hour ago and you probably won't remember the contents of that video. Who knows, maybe you might read a book and you don't remember the contents, but I would say the likelihood is quite different. And I feel like reading will not go away. I know some people have doubts that people will stop reading. People will no longer have an interest in long form content. No one would be very interested in like spending hours on such a long book. Like studying is lame, reading is lame. But frankly, so I think all these skepticisms have been proven false by how reading is becoming so much more popular now. And I would say that reading is gonna make a huge comeback. Why do I talk about it as though it's some K-pop idol group? But I honestly do think that the increasing popularity of reading is saying something about the way that younger people are responding to this kind of knowledge economy, or this kind of like oversaturated information that we are receiving every day. And so I feel like there's an interesting trend towards thoughtful content and thoughtful long form content. For example, the rise of commentary channels on YouTube, the rise of like really nuanced and really researched takes on things. And now people are not just in it for the aesthetics. Like you have to be aesthetic but also knowledgeable and also well read and well educated. And because like now you can read so many of these books and they are within your means, they're within your reach, no one has the excuse to be like this ignorant pretty thing anymore. And I would say it's kind of like a good thing that now people are actually romanticizing, right? I mean, people are actually seeing reading as a cool thing. People are actually seeing reading as something that like you would do with friends, which is kind of unheard of, like maybe 10 years ago. Like I thought, everyone thought that reading was kind of lame, unless you were some kind of nerd at the back of the class. And I don't know what to feel about the fact that, I mean, it's pros and cons. I think the pros is that reading has become something that, it's become a lot more mainstream, and people are a lot more skeptical of things that they see immediately online, and they would actually rather find books that talk about it, or authors that are a lot more researched. And authors are also semi-celebrities now, writers are semi-celebrities now, so there's this whole blurring effect. And reading kind of, how to say it kind of invades, and not invades, I mean, reading also is related to so many different fields and industries, right? I mean, you could have a celebrity who published a book, you could have characters in a book that could become the next merchandise line. There's so many intersections and overlaps with other industries. I think the cons is that, will books become overly commercialized now? I think that's kind of crazy to think about it, because like, of course you're going to have commercialized books, you're going to have certain series that are really overhyped and sold to the masses, and I wonder whether we are going to see a mass commercialization of books, to the extent where we got to be really careful about what books are being published and how they're being published, and which authors are being represented, and what voices we are listening to when we read books. And I'm glad that these conversations are part of the the online bookish community, but I'm not sure whether these conversations carry on to like the mainstream media. Like I don't know whether these big name influencers, when they're talking about books that changed their lives, that are they aware of some of the authors that they're reading, whether they had problematic pasts, or whether they would recommend books based on diversity and representation. Most likely, I don't think now we really see that, but I do see books kind of becoming really a prominent feature in a lot of like influential online figures, which is just really, I don't know, I just find it really cool. but also hoping that there'll be more voices that come out and talk about reading as a more personal journey rather than having to read popular books or having to read books just because your favorite influencer is telling you to read books. I'm hoping that there'll be, this much later consequence when people would kind of slow down and start to really enjoy reading for the sake of reading and not because it's a social trend. But if it has to start as a social trend, I think reading would be a very good trend versus maybe other, I don't know, maybe other things that might be a lot less helpful. I don't want to make judgments here, but I hope you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. So yeah, now I feel like in the big picture of things, there are multiple reasons why I would say reading is becoming more of a social trend. First is, of course, the pandemic. I do think that with the pandemic, people have a lot more time to themselves, and reading is the number one hobby that you can pick up when you're alone, and it's quite accessible to find a book. So you could just find an ebook. You could read it on your laptop or your mobile device, any sort of screen. You could go to your public library if you do have one to borrow a book. There's also secondhand shops where you can find books, and there are also a lot of online shops, e-commerce sites that would ship books to you if you want. So books, reading is probably one of the most easy to jump into hobbies when the pandemic came around. Other than that, I also do think that books provide a huge sense of escapism. This is a huge theme that I've heard about on the Bookstagram community. When I first started, a lot of people treated reading as a way to escape the changes in their own life. It could be fiction as a way to say like fantasy or YA. It was a way to kind of find comfort. Definitely, a lot of people were going back to old classics, their childhood favorites, and people were going back to like all these characters that they could just fawn over and enjoy the company of the story and the characters. Also in the nonfiction realm, a lot of people were like reading essays, they were reading self-help, and a lot of people were just trying to find tips and advice and things to hold on to. And I can understand why people would turn to books about it, because on the news, I think on the internet, it's very easy to be bombarded by so many things, and at least for books, they tend to be a lot more focused on one topic and a lot more in depth. And so your search for knowledge or your search for information becomes a lot more streamlined in that sense. And I can understand that. I mean, that's what I did when I started reading back when the pandemic hit. I was interested in one topic and I just read a lot about that one topic. And that was climate change. So I can see that. I can see the appeal of why the books, like reading books became, what am I saying? Reading books became a really popular hobby during the pandemic. I mean, any sort of solitary hobby became popular. Then afterwards, I do think that people started having a much more existential struggle and conflict. A lot of people were starting to question the news. People were questioning media. People were questioning their own celebrities, like influencers. There's just basically a lot of distrust, I would say, in everything that was going on around everyone. And I would think that maybe books help to alleviate some of that uncertainty, especially when it feels very heartfelt, like certain novels and books. I think it provides a very fixed understanding of time and ideas. And I think that in itself is very comforting. And in this time of uncertainty, it's a really great time for people to be reflecting about what their values are. And, nothing better than to take a book, read it, and have a conversation with it. I think it's a very different experience versus like talking to a friend. Sometimes I treat nonfiction reading as like having a conversation with a really smart person who dedicated a lot of their time researching a topic and like questioning myself whether do I agree with some of the points that this person made? What other things can I read to to bolster that point, or to bolster that, and should I fit that into my worldview? And I do see that a lot in a lot of other people during this period. So books giving this sort of a very steady, very structured way of making sense of things, which is something that, makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, actually. So, okay, so that's the end of this whole ramble. I hope it kind of makes sense. Like, I wanted to give a bit more context to this social trend. I also wanted to dig a little deeper into why I think reading is getting popular again. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I do think that people are generally still seeking a lot more for like structured things. And books, it's one of the most structured ways of obtaining information that I know. Not to say that books are like infallible. I mean, I do think that some books can be published without a lot of proofreading, and you just have to be critical of those kinds of books. But other than that, I do think that it gives a big satisfaction that might be harder to come by nowadays. The satisfaction of having a character arc or a storyline, the satisfaction of having an expert tell you about things. And I think it's also the satisfaction of having a really like beautiful writing, being able to witness that in words, especially when maybe you can't really travel to different places, you can't really go out and experience all these things, so you can actually travel through reading in some sense. And so that's my take. Maybe I should do more of this reading analysis thing. I quite enjoy it. Do let me know what you think of what I've said, and whether you agree or you disagree, and whether you think it is a trend. Do you think that reading is here to stay? Do you think it's getting popular, or do you think it's just us being in this very nerdy space? Do let me know. And I would want to go into maybe analysis of like things like YA or self-help, of like nonfiction essays, creative nonfiction, maybe even like classics that are being very, that are quite Eurocentric or whatever. I mean, anything really. I think it's pretty exciting. So thanks so much for joining me on this one, and I really enjoy this mic situation. So I'll see you in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And what am I saying? Oh, follow me on my socials. Look at me, just pitching my own socials as usual. So have a great week, and see ya.